This is Windshield Hoops. What's going on, everybody? This is Jay Wilder today, alongside Zach Urdina, of course. It's just the two of us today, but we're just going to give a reaction to the trade deadline for this episode. But to get started, Zach, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. That was such a weird trade deadline. I think there was 43 second round picks dealt. It was so weird. Every deal seemed to have like three or four attached to it. It's Super Bowl Sunday today. Eagles versus Chiefs, ready to watch that. But yeah, that was a really fun trade deadline. I think there was 16 trades on the day. It was cool.
It feels like as time is progressing, more and more teams don't own their own picks, right?
Yeah.
Like, obviously, there's like a handful of teams that own like handfuls of other teams' draft picks. And now it's like Oprah, you get a second round pick, you get a second round pick, you get a second round pick. So it's wild that all those draft picks game. But I think the bigger story is 49 players. Assuming this Warriors-Pistons deal goes down, right? Hawks, Blazers, everything. Assuming that deal goes down, 49 players will be dealt at this deadline. I don't know if that's a record, but I don't know the last time that many people have been traded at one deadline.
Yeah, that's got to be like, I wonder what percent of the league that is. I don't know exactly how many players there are, but that's got to be at least like 15% of the
It's like
NBA was
10%.
traded.
Like
Yeah,
10%, a
10%.
little over 10.
Like
Yeah.
that's pretty nuts though. That's like an average of every team is moving like over one player at the deadline.
Yeah, if you want to do the math, smarty pants, it's 1.633333 people per team. Do the math. Look up at the calculator. Tell me if I'm right.
You're probably right.
49 divided by 30. If you guys don't know, I'm pretty good at mental math. It's
Oh yeah, dude.
1.633333.
He's unbelievable at oh yeah, I forgot my
Was that right?
internet doesn't work. Yeah, that's crazy.
Yep. We're not ball knowers necessarily, but we're number knowers, right?
Yeah. James the
But
number knower.
let's get started with this. So there's so much to get into with this deadline. Of course, just to, get all started, you just want to get started on a normal basis and talk about the deadline or not stock risers of the week.
Yeah, let's start off with that. I'll start off with mine. By the way, I won again last week with the Cam Thomas pick. By
Mm-hmm.
the way, I think he dropped two more 40-point games after I said that. So that was pretty cool. But this week I'm kind of going with a projection again, kind of like I did last week, with a young player on a really young team that just had a starting spot open for him with a trade. And I mean, he's had some solid performances recently that also helped me lead me to this take. But I think Mark Williams with the Hornets is in a prime position to make a jump up. He's struggled to get playing time this year. When he's played, he's looked pretty solid. He's had some nice games recently, and I really think as he consistently starts to get starts, especially next to somebody like LaMelo Ball, he's really going to show up and prove to be potentially the future center for that Hornets team.
That's a good pick. You're kind of pulling what I usually do. I usually go after the guy nobody talks about. This week I'm going to go after a guy people talk about. That guy is Evan Mobley. My pick is Evan Mobley this week. His last 15 games, man, he's averaging over 19 points and 9 rebounds, just under 2 blocks a game. His offense has just been incredibly productive. And when you look at his box score, right, like recent box score, he's dropped 38 recently. He had 28 just a couple days ago. So he's just been absolutely balling this last month, right? Like, when was that 38-point game? It feels like it was recent. I don't think it was. It was on January 21st. So it was a few weeks ago now, but I remember watching that game against the Bucks, and he was just unbelievable. His aggression, especially against the trees, right? I think that's the most impressive thing about it. He was able to take over against the trees, and obviously he's one of the best defenders in the league. The Cavs had the first ranking in defensive rating, and I think Evan Mobley is the best defender on that team. So he should be all defense. He's now scoring more consistently. And the more he does that, man, I think he's going to surpass Darius Garland as the second best player in the Cavs as soon as next year.
Yeah, and his progression over time is really a big story for the Cavaliers team and their ascension if they can win a championship, because they need him to turn into probably their second best player if they want to win it all in the future. If he can develop into that guy, and you still have Garland at a all-star caliber point guard, and you have Donovan Mitchell playing at all NBA, like that's a team that's going to win a championship probably in 2 years. So we'll see what happens, but I've been loving what I've been seeing from Mobley.
Yeah, absolutely. So, guys, he won last week. Hopefully, you guys do me right this week. Get Evan Mobley some love because he's actually done it. No offense to my boy Mark
Yeah.
Williams,
You'll
right?
win it. You'll win it probably.
So vote Evan Mobley or Mark Williams, and we'll get there. But I want to go start talking about trades now, and I think the first one we got to talk about is the Pistons, Hawks, Warriors, Blazers deal, because there's a new report that just came out. Report from Woj 1 minute ago from this moment we're recording. From last night, Warriors shared the league office, or I can't read. From last night, Warriors shared with the league office that they believe Blazers withheld relevant medical information prior to agreeing on trade. NBA could punish Portland with a fine/loss of picks if investigation went to discover a failure to disclose relevant information. So there's a little bit of controversy going on in Golden State, Portland world right now, and I think the Pistons and the Hawks are just sitting in the background to say, please confirm the trade. I swear, for Christmas' sake. So I think the trade's going to get finalized eventually. You can't bring James Wiseman back to that locker room after trading him, right? So I guess it's going to go down regardless. But let's talk about that. Assuming that trade goes down, what are your biggest takeaways from this deal?
Well, I mean, obviously, Wiseman's going to Detroit, where hopefully it's a place where he can get more playing time. But I still like the path to getting legit playing time every night is going to be hard in Detroit because they have a Jalen Duren who has been playing good basketball, and you're not gonna prioritize Wiseman over Duren at all. And they have, so they still have Isaiah Stewart. Stewart started 43 out of the 46 games he's played this year, and he's playing almost 30 minutes a game. So are they going to take it away from Stewart now? I'm not too sure. Maybe they, plug Wiseman at power forward for minutes. You still have Marvin Bagley at points. So it's like the path to playing with the Pistons is not going to be very easy. With getting Gary Trent Jr. back for the Warriors, that helps their bench. This team has had a really horrible bench all year, and he was a very key piece to that championship team last year. He's got 3 more years left. I mean, they could have just re-signed him. But he went to Portland, obviously. And then with the Hawks, getting Saddiq Bey, I think he's going to be a valuable bench piece for them, see what he can do. He's still a young prospect, but I'm mainly interested to see what type of playing time Wiseman gets in Detroit.
Yeah, my biggest takeaway from this trade overall is it feels like there's a lot of redundance for the young players in this trade. Like you start with James Wiseman, right? He ends up in Detroit, and you mentioned it. Jalen Duren just coming off of the best game of his career. He just had a 30 and 17 piece 2 days ago. So right after the James Wiseman trade, he comes in and absolutely tears junk up. He's been amazing. And I don't think you're going to bench Stewart because I think Wiseman and Duren are way more redundant than Stewart and one of those two guys, right? And there's been reports that if the Pistons land James Wiseman, Wiseman will start, which I don't understand because he hasn't outplayed Duren. And I just think that's bad for the dude's development who's earned those minutes. So, I understood the trade at first when I thought it was like, okay, he's going to get 24 minutes off the bench, play through his mistakes, whatever. But it feels like he's actually going to probably start unless that 30 and 17 games says otherwise. So I don't love the fit in Detroit. I'm happy he ended up on a team where he can get minutes because he's going to get more opportunities there than Golden State. But, I wanted Wiseman somewhere like San Antonio after they let go of Jakob Poeltl because you're playing under Pop, you're starting. There's really there's no risk to playing him because you're not trying to win. Like, I thought Detroit isn't a bad spot. It isn't a great spot either because it's going to be really hard for both Duren and Wiseman to battle out when, I think Duren's proven that he's on path to become the best center in his draft class, even over Walker Kessler, right? So, yeah, I'm not a huge fan of that, but I think when you look at trading Saddiq Bey, I didn't love Saddiq Bey. Like, I loved him in college at Villanova, but coming into the league, his jump shot wasn't translating consistently besides that one random 10-3 game he had against Boston. And his defense hasn't been there either. He's been graded as a bottom 10 defender in defensive plus minus the last 2 years. So his defense is horrid. His shooting hasn't been consistent. So I'm not a huge Saddiq Bey guy. So I understand Detroit moving off of him before extending him. And him going to Atlanta is odd because it's like, All right, now you got DeAndre Hunter, AJ Griffin, Bogdan Bogdanovic, right? And now you have Sadiq Bey. A little redundant there. I don't know what his role is going to be there either. So interesting there. Warriors, you trade your second overall pick to get the guy that you left last year,
Yeah.
which I think is a little strange. It saves money, I guess, but you're literally swapping Wiseman for Gary Payton essentially from last year, cutting off a guy from a roster. And Portland's a weird because they made a Josh Hart trade too, and it's really hard to tell what direction they're heading. That deadline did not feel like we're trying to win, right? It didn't feel like
Yeah.
that. They let go of Josh Hart. They let go of Gary Payton, who's been battling injuries, but when healthy, he gives a lot of value. He's very valuable as a point of attack defender for a team that lacks that. So interesting trade because I don't love it for anybody.
Yeah, and like especially for like it kind of confuses me for Portland. What direction are they trying to take? If you don't want to win, then trade Damian Lillard. Like I don't
Yeah.
get why they're like. I mean, it makes sense to me why Dame wants to stay because I can understand him being super loyal and stuff. But I don't know why Portland's still married to this relationship. I think they have to move on at some point. Like, be a smart organization. You're really hurting your future by keeping him right now because right now you could go out and get like a Kevin Durant, Rudy Gobert package for him probably because he's
Yeah.
got multiple years left on his contract and he's still an All NBA like player. You
Yeah.
can't tell me there's not a team that would go out and ship 4 first-round picks and some young guys off for him.
The
Like,
Grizzlies offered 4 first-round picks for Mikal Bridges.
yeah, like they could easily get that package and they're just holding themselves back. And I think they're going to get to the point at some point, where Damian Lillard starts to decline and they have to ship him off for less and they kind of screw themselves for the
Yeah.
future. And they're going to be stuck in this tanking phase for years and, just trying to climb out of it because they won't let go of a Damian Lillard. So we'll see what this turns out to be for Portland. The Hawks were kind of weird at the deadline because, I mean, this is like the third year in a row where John Collins has been heavily rumored to be dealt, but he's never been
Miles
dealt.
Turner all over again.
Yeah, like I don't get how they haven't dealt that guy yet. I guess that's just never going to happen. He's always going to be in, Atlanta despite, whatever rumors come out. Yeah, that was an interesting deal for sure.
Yeah, I'm all with you. And do you think for Detroit, was this move worth it to you? Because you're getting a number 2 overall pick that you're swinging on, right? Which is fair. Like Wiseman didn't work out in Golden State, but he has a lot of excuses, right? Because he was not getting the reps there, and you need reps as a center who needs instinctual development, right? So he wasn't getting reps. So if you're Detroit, do you think it was worth it even though Duren's on the roster?
Yeah, I think it, because I mean, I don't know how much Isaiah Stewart is a part of their future. We'll see what happens there. But I think at some point, I think Wiseman and Duren could coexist if they developed enough together. But I don't really see how Sadiq Bey really fit into their future. I
Yeah.
think it wouldn't have made sense to extend him. He probably would have asked for a lot of money. I think Sadiq Bey, if you look at his numbers, I don't know if he's scoring like 13, 14 a game, but it's on really poor efficiency. I think
Like
I
that
think
for his
he's
whole career.
yeah, I think he's a solid player, but I think
Mm.
his numbers being high are a product of him playing for a crappy Pistons team and constantly getting opportunities and being able to play through that failure at a high volume. So I think it makes sense to bring in somebody like Wiseman, who we can both agree definitely has more upside still, and
Mm-hmm.
try to develop that and not have to extend a Sadiq Bey right now. So we'll see what happens. But I do like the swing in general for the Pistons. I don't know what else they really could have done there. So I think it was a solid move from them.
Now that I'm really thinking about it during this conversation, I'm thinking about 2 things. One, I'm thinking about Jalen Duren's switchability, right? He can really switch in the outside. I think that's really intriguing about him. It's why I had him as a top 5 prospect. That was one
Yeah.
of the main reasons. He's really switchable. James Wiseman can really shoot it. He can shoot the ball. He can't show it consistently in Golden State because they didn't need that from him, but he can shoot the basketball. So now that I think about it, with Cade Cunningham at the helm, maybe those two can coexist. Wiseman can be like a somewhat of a stretch big who attacks closeouts, and defensively Duren is kind of the switching four type of big who can also protect the rim, right?
Yeah.
Like that two big lineup could work. Would you agree?
Yeah, I could see it working. I think they could definitely coexist together as a power forward and center in the future. And then that's a really big lineup because you got Cade Cunningham who's probably running point guard at 6'8", and then you got
Yeah.
like 7-footers. Yeah, I think the rim protection with that team could be pretty insane. And I do believe in Duren as a switchable, power forward center defender. I think I think he could work in that role at some point. It might not be the best role for him. Like he might be better at center, but I think it's doable. And when you're trying to get your best players in the court at all times, I think it's doable for the Pistons in the future.
Yeah, I just think I don't want it to be a situation where like one guy is playing and the other guy is not, even though one guy earned it, one guy didn't. I don't want it to be one of those situations in Detroit. Like Wiseman, I don't think he should just be handed a starting job over Duren with the way Duren has played. Right. And I think Wiseman deserves a shot to beat Duren because look, Duren's been really good as a rookie. He's averaging 9 and 7 on a bottom three team, but he's been really good lately. So I think they should be able to fight out a starting lineup if you decide they can't coexist. And even so, like, I don't know. It's still weird kind of to take away a kid who's looking like a starting center opportunities for a guy who hasn't proven it. I don't know. It's a little confusing just because there's a lot of redundancy at the center position, but we'll see there. I think there's a path for Wiseman and Duren to work. And if Detroit is really thinking like we're going to start them both together, I'll peep that. That's interesting. At least as a try.
Yeah, it should be interesting to watch for sure.
All right, so we talked about all these teams. I think Portland we mentioned also like where's this team headed? Like this deadline they've traded what is it? They've traded Josh Hart, they've traded Gary Payton, right? They've taken in Cam Reddish, Matisse Thybulle, and 5 second-round picks. And is there anybody I'm missing? Oh, Cam Reddish. They brought in Cam Reddish too. So it doesn't feel like a move. They're stepping forward. So we'll see what Portland does. I don't love this middling path they always try to take. Like they go all in on Jeremy Grant, and then they step out, and then they trade their depth, right? Even before that, they trade away CJ. They get draft picks of flexibility. I think they're rebuilding. Nope. They use that to go on Jeremy Grant. They use that to spend money and extend people. And then now they're trading players and bringing inferior players in. I don't know. It's frustrating. It really is. But
they can't stop changing up the path they want to be on.
We only started with that topic just because of the random report we got from Woj. But I think we all know what people want to hear about.
Oh, yeah.
Phoenix Suns. This deadline couldn't get any crazier, any more unpredictable. We heard about Kyrie Irving. He's gone. We talked about that on our last episode if you guys want to listen to that. And then we thought, okay, they're surrounding KD with just a lot of guys, right? They're going to go all in on having KD with a ton of wing depth, right? Nope. They're done. That Nets ownership is done. Shipping off KD to the Suns alongside TJ Warren, who got drafted by the Suns, for Mikal Bridges, Cam Johnson, 4 first-round picks, 5 second-round picks. And the Bucks received Jay Crowder in the 3-team trade where the Nets get 5 second-round picks. So essentially, Mikal Bridges, Cam Johnson, and 10 picks for KD.
Yeah.
Start with the Suns. What does this mean for them?
Well, I mean, the obvious thing is this means they're going all in for a championship. And, with the timeline of a few of these players, especially Chris Paul and Kevin Durant, I think their window to win a championship is this year and next year. I don't know about the year after that. We'll have to see. But I think their window is projectably these next 2 years. I think this is definitely one of the top favorites to win the championship in the NBA. I do have concerns about their depth. I'm sure we can talk about who we take over them soon. But yeah, they're going all in, and their window is now. And if they don't win now, they're not going to win with this core. So, we'll see what happens.
Yeah, this is crazy. I'm happy. I'm happy for Phoenix Suns fans. We started on the wrong foot this year. I made a post that said the Phoenix Suns are not a playoff team right now. And I got a lot of backlash. I said I question the connectivity of that roster and the durability of that roster. And for a while, I looked right. But, let's move past that. Phoenix, time to rejoice. You guys, even if you guys made the playoffs this year, this was not a championship roster. There's just not enough depth and firepower on this team. I love Mikal Bridges. I sort of like DeAndre Ayton, right? Chris Paul, him and I sort of have beef, but I didn't love the firepower on this team overall. Whether my opinions on them are right or wrong, I didn't trust the firepower, and the Suns had to decide to make a path. Okay, is it time to go all in on these next couple of years, or is it time to take a step back and take stuff back and hopefully in Booker's late prime you suddenly have a championship roster, right? You've won enough to keep him around. Phoenix decided, you know what? We got Chris Paul on this team right now. It's time to get us a championship. Let's go all in, right? And they finally go all in on this deal. We've heard it for a long time. They finally do it. Mikal Bridges, Cam Johnson, 4 firsts to swap. That's a ton. But when you have a chance to land a top 5 player in the NBA, when you have a chance to land, honestly, 3 of the 4 best mid-range shooters in the NBA on the same team, between Devin Booker, Chris Paul, Kevin Durant, it's ridiculous. This team does have a lot of holes still. The defense certainly didn't get better in this trade. I think Kevin Durant can give you about 70% of what Bridges can defensively. The bench is still a question, even with Terrence Ross signing with the team. But, overall, the firepower of this team is crazy. And when you look at matchups, this, playoffs are all about matchups. The best team in the West right now is Denver. How do they defend? A lot of drop, right?
Yeah.
And the Phoenix Suns, with 3 of the 4 best mid-range shooters in the world, can abuse the drop, right? Putting an athletic big rolling against Jokic and then having guys who could pull up from the midi spot. That's a really tough defensive matchup for Denver. So Phoenix is established itself with its overall firepower with Monty Williams at the helm as I think one of the 2 favorites in the West, and the other team in the West that you're rival against, that's bad grammar, rival against, that team you have an edge up in terms of matchups. So this just made you a finals team. Do I trust the bench enough? Do I trust Chris Paul enough to have them over Boston and Milwaukee? No. But this certainly put them in contention as a top 4 team in the NBA. And as long as they're a top 4 team in the NBA, there's always a chance to win a championship, and it was time.
Yeah, I think this is my favorite to come out of the West. I would pick the Suns to come out of the West right now, but I still think Boston is better in the East. Their Boston's bench is just, it's heads and toes better than what the Suns put out there. I mean, you got Brogdon, you got Hauser, you got Williams, you got Blake Griffin, who's been playing well for them. They got so many guys off that bench in Boston that would just absolutely kill anything the Suns can put out there. Yeah. And I think that's the difference maker. Like, you can't play your starters all the time, and there's multiple starters in that Suns team now that have legit injury concerns throughout their careers, and especially recently. So, can that team stay healthy? That's also a question. I would still pick them to come out of the West, but I do like the Celtics more in the East. But I would love to see a finals between the Suns and the Celtics. I think that'd be so fun to watch.
Or Bucks Suns rematch.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. I mean, and Milwaukee we got to talk about, because this is a team that's quietly won 10 straight games, and they've been battling injuries, but they're finally healthy and nobody can beat them. So they're literally as far in the conversation as Boston is, as Phoenix is, right? But I agree. I think I would take a big 4-ish, big 5-ish of Brogdon, Tatum, Brown, Williams / Smart with KD, Booker, Chris Paul, and Nathan, with CP3's regression. And you add to the fact that the bench for Boston's a lot better, right? So, yeah, maybe the Suns' big 4 is a little better, but I think the Celtics bench is better, like you said, and it's just a heavier defensive team. So, yeah, it's interesting. I think this deal puts the Suns as the favorite in the West, but, I'll probably still have them 3rd in terms of favorites, because I trust Milwaukee and Boston a little more. But, like I said, if you're a Suns fan, rejoice. It was time to go all in. Your team did it. And this is not only a 1-year window. You have next year too, probably, because as long as Kevin Durant's on your team, man, you got a chance, and you never know what the league is going to look like next year.
Yeah, we could see the West, go through a lot this next upcoming offseason. But for this deal, I also really liked what the Nets got back. I did too. I still think this is a team that can be in the playoffs. I don't think you can win a playoff series with this team because you don't have a number 1 option, and you're not going to have a player that's going to be the best player in a series. But I do think this is still, a top 8 team in the Eastern Conference, and they might be the best defense in the league. Like, they have so much unbelievable defensive power, especially in that starting lineup. You got Nick Claxton, who is going to be a defense player of the year type guy. You got Mikal Bridges, who can be in that same conversation any given year. Dorian Finney-Smith is an awesome defender. Like, they just have good defenders
Ben
up and
Simmons was
down.
just second in
Yeah.
defensive player of the year race 2 years ago.
Yeah, like you have Ben Simmons, who is an all-NBA type defender at his best. Like, their defense is absolutely nuts. This is a good non-tanking move. You're keeping, the team really competitive still because you're not going to have first-round picks for a little bit. I mean, you're going to have the Phoenix Suns picks, but you're not going to have your own. So you can't really go into a tank. And I don't really think this team has, cap space. But if they can, figure out a way to get another star next to this team, I think this is a really good core to build around. You just need that number one option. And, the question is, how are they going to get that guy?
Yeah, absolutely. I loved what the Nets did, too, in terms of if you're going to move off of Kevin Durant, like, I think for identity's sake, just making them fun and deep again, I think that's good for the NBA. And with Brooklyn, I wasn't a fan of moving off of KD and Kyrie because I was like, okay, you already dug your grave, just lay in it.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think this is going to boost their ceiling by any stretch of the imagination. But first of all, this is the best defensive core in the NBA. I would say, like you talked about it, Bridges, Claxton, Finney-Smith, O'Neal, Simmons, Dinwiddie can defend when he wants to. I can go on and on with this team. It's a scary defensive team. They're fun. They move the ball well. Like, this is a Nets team that it can win 44 games in an 82-game season sample size, 45 by clawing its way defensively and having just enough offense. And the cool thing is, like, with these Suns draft picks, I think they have another pick from Dallas too.
Yep.
You can easily go, and if you identify another star who you could put around just a really deep core, you have a competitive package to go all in for that guy. And obviously, I think that'd be PTSD for Brooklyn fans because what happened last time, right? But I think that conversation will happen down the road. And when that happens, this would be an excellent core to build around. I was watching that 76ers and Nets game yesterday, and my goodness, it was a 101-98 game that the 76ers won. And I just feel like there's going to be a lot of those this year, right? It looked like Embiid and Harden had to claw for every single bucket. Maxey could not get any separation. It's an incredible defense. The offense is not there. The offense went so cold in the fourth quarter. But to be a fun, competitive team, and I hope that Cam Thomas continues his development. I don't know why Brooklyn didn't play him a lot yesterday. He was on the bench yesterday, and he didn't play in clutch time. But when he played, he really impressed again. And I thought, like, for a team that needs more offensive juice, he's the exact guy you need on the court. So we'll see how this team develops, man. I was joking on Twitter that this Nets team reminds me of, like, a Mitchell and Rudy with Cam Thomas and Claxton. Yeah, just have a lot of, like, switchable guys around them. Obviously, the Jazz went towards spacing, and now the Nets went towards switchability. But it's be fun. I'm actually really excited to watch this Nets team.
Yeah, I think I was talking about this yesterday. I think they're the new NBA's golden team like they were in 2019. The vibes seem pretty cool. They have a lot of really likable players on the roster up and down. Not too many polarizing guys in that team. And, they're all trying to gut it out and win. It's a first option by committee type team. There's no really, big egos on the team to deal with. And I think it'd be a fun year, the rest of the year for them. And I think they're going to make the playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, if they miss the playoffs, that'd be a pretty big drop off because they're the 4 seed right now. So, KD and Kyrie tucked a pretty nice bed for this new team to lay on. So that is the situation there. And, I'm excited to see just what a Mikal Bridges team looks like. I know there's not a very high ceiling to that, but, his offensive development the last month has been pretty awesome. He's averaging 23 over the last month, and he dropped 23 on his debut, and he looked really comfortable. Like, could this be a guy who becomes a second star on a Nets team or a third star, right? Especially if you make space for like a Cam Thomas's growth. If he can show that 340-point game wasn't an insanity run. And on top of that, like if you trade for like a Damian Lillard down the road, I don't know, just throwing it out there. So, yeah, I'm excited for this Nets team.
Yeah, for sure. Dame could be one of those guys, if he magically became available, and if the Blazers could actually move on from him, that'd be cool. But yeah, if they can, try to package these picks for our star, I think they have a phenomenal core around those guys.
Especially if Ben Simmons can get his head right, man. It was sad. He
Oh
played
yeah,
10 minutes and 17 seconds in the first half yesterday on a team without a franchise player as a 3-time All-Star at 26 years old. That's really sad.
yeah,
And
it's rough.
I think he had like 3 points.
Yeah, I think he's super in his head. Like he doesn't have the same drive offensively. I don't
Yeah.
get it. He's falling off a cliff there. I don't get
Whatever happened in that Eastern Conference Championship game against second round semifinals. Whatever happened that like it broke him. I don't know what happened there. Hopefully he gets the help he gets, or he needs.
Agreed.
Okay, let's transition to I would say the second biggest trade the biggest trade out of KD and Kyrie at the deadline. So the Lakers, Jazz, and Timberwolves got in a 3-team trade, as we all know. The Lakers got D'Lo, Vanderbilt, Beasley. The Jazz got Westbrook and a protected pick, and Minnesota got Nickeil Alexander-Walker, Mike Conley, and 3 second-round picks. What are your biggest takeaways in this deal, Zach?
Well, I was, shout out to Rob Pelinka and the Lakers. They got a ton of value without having to give up a ton. Like they gave up Westbrook, a protected first-round pick, and I think that might have been it for, really, you really improved the depth. You got, a third star type next to Davis and LeBron. And I think Vanderbilt's going to be really good for them. He was awesome last night. You got Beasley, a shooter. This team desperately needed more shooting still, and he's going to, provide most likely that over time for them. But yeah, I think this is a team that's really going to push for playoff contention, and they're probably going to try to extend D'Angelo Russell. I would be very surprised if they don't give D'Lo what he wants because they really can't risk losing him at this point. If they want to keep LeBron and Davis and continue to win around those guys. But yeah, I like it for them. The Timberwolves, they got a better fit in Mike Conley for their roster. It just made sense for them to do it, especially, with the D'Angelo Russell locker room rumors with Rudy Gobert, with that just not working out. And the Jazz, you continue your rebuild. They probably didn't get as much as I anticipated they get, but, you still got a Lakers first-round draft pick, which could be an absolute gold mine, when that happens. So, we'll see what happens. But, I really like this deal for the Lakers especially.
The Los Angeles Lakers is the most improved team from the trade market this year. I truly believe that. When you look at what they started the season with, right? We're talking Thomas Bryant, Patrick Beverley, I love you. Kendrick Nunn. Is there anybody else I'm missing? Thomas Bryant. I said Thomas Bryant.
Yeah.
So they had a lot of guys like that. This team lacked shooting. This team lacked point of attack defenders. It lacked depth. It was a really shallow roster. And you end up turning that into D'Angelo Russell, Malik Beasley, and Jared Vanderbilt on this particular deal where they only dealt 1 first-round pick. That's a bargain. And then you talk about acquiring Roy Hashimura for 3 second-round picks. Another young player who can play. Mo Bamba. I'm not a huge Mo Bamba guy, but I think he's one of those toolsy kids who might work with LeBron. So this Lakers team all of a sudden, and you add that to Austin Reeves and Lonnie Walker alongside with AD, LeBron, obviously Schroeder as well. This went from one of the most shallow teams in the NBA to I think one of the 10 best at the very least 10-man rotations in the entire league. It's deeper, it's younger, way younger. And I think if the Lakers started over this season with this roster, I would probably have this team as a top 5 seed. I worry about this particular season just because, they're still 5 games under 500, and they still have a few games out of the playoff seeds. And LeBron, he's banged up a lot now. AD's banged up a lot. And you also got to consider the maturation process that comes with having all these new players on your roster. I think it's going to be tough for the Lakers to go in and just light crap on fire and make the playoffs and make the run. Like, even if the Lakers, scratch and claw to the playoffs, you're asking a 38-year-old to go on the road, right? After scratching a claw and you get to the playoffs, which I think is going to require. So I don't think this is the Lakers' year this year, but this roster is significantly better. And I think that next year, if they keep this core together for the most part, it could be very, very, very good if healthy.
Yeah, I mean, like you're saying for this year too. Like, the last few years of this team after the championship run, probably the biggest issues were just the availability of their top guys. And I think that's
Mm-hmm.
going to be a trend that we continue to see this year because now even D'Angelo Russell, all the other top three guys have significant recent injury history. Obviously, LeBron doesn't have really big injury history, but
Just an
recently he
ankle.
has. Yeah. But with him, I mean, Anthony Davis recently as well, how often can those guys stay in the lineup? Like, obviously, the team's a lot better without those guys now because you added a bunch of really nice depth pieces. But this question is if they really want to make a climb into the, one of the top or, the higher seeds in the West, to make the play-in at least, what's the health of those guys going to look like? And can they stay on the court for hopefully, more of the rest of the year?
Yeah, no doubt. There's a lot of questions still, but I think another point we forgot to mention in regards to comparing this to the championship team. Look what that championship team had. It had depth, it had rim protection, it had athleticism around LeBron and Anthony Davis. And then when they traded for Westbrook, I feel bad for Westbrook because it kind of put him at a rough spot, but that was all cut out. All of a sudden, you're building around LeBron, AD, a regressing Westbrook with no capital, no draft picks. That wasn't the answer. Going top heavy on an old team with injury issues was not the answer. Going full depth with a tertiary shot creator with more run and gun athletes who could shoot and defend, that was the move. And that's exactly what the Lakers did. And credit to them. They traded a couple non-valuable assets plus a first-round pick to literally land all the depth this team needs, right? They got more shot making on this team, arguably, than that old team. Like Kyle Kuzma wasn't quite the player he is right now. And I think D'Angelo Russell is going to be able to give this team 16 to 18 points a game. And then Malik Beasley, he's another shooter. Like, they missed KCP for that. Malik Beasley can shoot, right? Roy Hachimura is athletic. And then you have Mo Bamba, who's big and long, who can protect the rim and hit threes. That's another LeBron guy. And Jared Vanderbilt, who was the most impactful Laker yesterday, who is literally just going to jump in every gap, go for every rebound. He was hitting jump shots. He was making connective reads. Like, that's another guy I think LeBron's going to love playing with. So, I think this is the team 2 years ago if LeBron had, instead of the roster he had on that championship team, they still win the championship. So if things click like that 2020 Lakers team, it maybe not this year, but next year, and LeBron's still at the same level, I mean, this is a team I still think that could end up in the contention conversation.
Yeah, and when you look at like the landscape of LeBron James's career, I mean, obviously you want to fit stars around him, but one of the biggest things if you're a GM, what you have to do is you got to fit shooters around him because he's always
Mm-hmm.
winning with shooters. And the one thing that Rob Pelinka did wrong with that Westbrook trade is he traded away his shooting, and then all of a sudden, the next few years of his career, he doesn't have any shooting around him, and it just
Yeah.
doesn't work as much. When you put shooters around LeBron James, it works. And
Mm-hmm.
that's been true every year that he's played next shooters in his career, and now they finally got some more of that around him, so that's going to
Yep.
improve his ability to play basketball too, and it's going to take pressure off him. He doesn't have to score 30 every night anymore. So yeah, we'll see. It'll probably help LeBron too when it comes to injuries because he's not going to be probably taking as many rim attacks as usual. But yeah, we'll see. I really like this deal for the Lakers.
And you look at D'Lo, 39% from three. Malik Beasley, high
Yeah.
volume, 36%. Lonnie Walker can shoot. Austin Reeves can shoot, right? They got more shooting, and that's really important. Mo Bamba is a near 40% three-point shooter at the center. I think that can definitely set up some pick and pop opportunities with LeBron as a slasher, right? It's a roster that makes more sense next to LeBron. And I was getting so frustrated with this team because it's like, why are you holding on to your 2029 first round pick? Like, why are you holding on to this stuff? Why do you care? What are the odds you'll be good then anyway? Right? So I was never a fan of that. When you got a guy like LeBron who you're not going to get for 20 years at least, right? Well, you're never going to get another LeBron, but like a player that's a superstar doesn't come just every 3 years, even for the Lakers, right? So I was mad they wouldn't maximize him. But yeah, this is the deal that I am in love with because they literally dealt one first round pick in this entire thing.
Yeah, which is
So
which is really surprising.
very surprising. So And then when I look at the Utah Jazz in this trade, look, I think they underpaid. I think they obviously very much value that 2027 first round pick. But I think the confusing thing is if this 2027 first round pick converts into a top 4 pick, it moves to a second round pick. You don't get that pick
Wow.
next year. It converts to a second round pick. So it's not a very strong protected pick when you consider it like that. And you traded 3 rotation players for that. I don't love the value. Like, look, if it turns into the 5th or 6th pick, then fantastic. It's a good trade. But it could very well end up turning into a second round pick. And you trade 3 good players, pretty much. Mike Conley, Beasley and Vando for just a swing at maybe the 5th pick at its ceiling. I think they could have gotten more. That's where I'm at.
Yeah, and I remember hearing the reports that they were like going out and like hunting for a first round pick for just for Jared Vanderbilt, like not even the rest of that. And that's basically what they got for like all 3 of those guys. And it could be even less if the pick doesn't turn out, which is very possible because I don't know how good the Lakers are going to be in 2027, and they could be having, very good odds to get a top 3 pick that year. So we'll see what happens there. But yeah, they could have definitely gotten more is my thing. They really helped out the Lakers in this deal. They helped them get a lot of value for cheaper than, they would have got anywhere else. So maybe they paid Danny Ainge on the table. Who knows? But I mean, they already got a ton of value from the Rudy Gobert and Donovan Mitchell deal. So they're probably like, we don't care as much about value anymore. We'll let somebody else beat us in a trade.
Danny Ainge is really smart. I don't think he thinks like that. I think he leaves every stone turned, and he tries to maximize his value. You know what? Maybe the league just didn't value Malik Beasley and Jared Vanderbilt as much as we thought they did.
It's possible.
Maybe that's what
that's
what happened. And if that's the case, like they're undervalued assets overall, especially Jared Vanderbilt. Like Beasley, I like, but he's definitely limited as a defender, and he's incredibly streaky. That's not a guy I pay $15 million, but getting Jared Vanderbilt too, who's 23 on a good contract, who's getting better every single season. I thought they could have gotten more, but maybe not. Maybe this is the most they could have gotten for them, which would be disappointing because, usually Danny Ainge is able to strip every ounce of the value he possibly can. So, yeah, I don't love this trade for the Lakers, but, getting another first-round pick, this team is loaded in first-round picks. We'll see. If it turns into a top 4 pick, then really bad luck.
Yeah, for sure.
And then for Minnesota in this trade, this it's another one of those Tim Conley trades. It completely divides the fan base. Half the people love it, half the people hate it. That's kind of the story of D'Angelo Russell's career, to be honest. Half the people love him, half the people hate him. And for Minnesota, I actually really like this trade. I think it's a very solid trade. It's not an A trade, but I think it's a very solid B. And D'Angelo Russell, I think, is a good fit with Anthony Edwards when Karl Anthony Towns isn't on the floor. When he is on the floor with Ant and Cat, I think there's just a lot of mouths to feed, especially if you prioritize Jaden McDaniels' offensive growth. So I think you needed a lower maintenance player at the point guard position next to Ant, next to Cat. And Mike Conley is that. Like when you look at his playmaking metrics, he is literally a 98th, 99th percentile playmaker this year. He's one of the best passers in the league this year. And he can shoot the ball. And I think even more importantly, beyond being a server, is he is an excellent leader. Excellent leader. And I think you need guys like that around Ant and Jaden to help build those habits. That's where Houston's messing up right now. They might have gotten that Danny Green. They just bought him out. Houston has no guys like that. Sorry if I'm taking shots at Houston Rocket fans, but the Timberwolves, they're doing a good job getting veterans around Ant, around Jaden. And another thing in regards to the fit, right? We know that Mike Conley's played with Rudy Gobert. That is fantastic. I think Rudy's going to elevate by that. But on top of that, Mike Conley this year was a big part of Lauri Markkanen having a career breakout season as a wing stretch big-ish player, which I think is Cat's vision next to Ant, right? So theoretically, I think he's going to figure it out with Cat relatively quickly, considering the Lauri Markkanen situation. So I think that works. And you also consider that you save money in this trade. I think you get an exception in this trade as well. So It allows room for a Naz Reid extension. It allows flexibility for another trade, and plus 3 second-round picks, which we saw at the deadline, could be very key at getting players.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think it's a good deal for Minnesota. If I had to rank, I think the Lakers won the trade. I think Minnesota second. I think Utah third.
Yeah, and we saw, the fit and how much differently Conley runs his passing compared to D'Angelo Russell game one. I mean, I think there was like 3 plays in a row where Conley was rolling off of, like a Rudy Gobert screen, and then boom, it was quick pass to the corner, boom, quick pass, quick pass. Like he
Yep.
was just like he's got like this like laser vision with everybody on the court, and he's just like if somebody's open, he's drilling them with the ball. And I don't think that's something D'Angelo Russell did because he was always, he was good at it because like he was making buckets. He deserved to
Yeah.
be taking a lot of those shots, but it wasn't the best for the Wolves when he was always targeting his own shots when we could be prioritizing now, especially when Cat comes back because, I think Cat definitely deserves more offensive run than D'Angelo Russell, when it comes to shot attempts. And it was
Yeah.
going to be hard to feed, a D'Lo, an Ant, and then a Cat, and then still try to develop Jade and then still try to keep Rudy happy with getting him a few shots a
Yeah.
game that he likes. Like it would have been hard to do. And yeah, I mean, I do think it was a solid move for them to make. It was probably one they had to make. And I'm assuming D'Lo wanted a nice extension this offseason. Probably one the Wolves didn't really want to pay him. So, they saved money too. So we'll see what happens. I like the fit though. I'm excited to watch the next few months of basketball for the Wolves.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the first game was choppy, as you expect for a playmaker, because
Mhm.
he doesn't know the tendencies of his team. He doesn't know the roster yet. And you consider all that together alongside him playing in Memphis, him basically being coached by every single coach from both benches, right? Because he was talking about that in his post game, right? Like it was weird because Minnesota has Utah guys. They're playing in Memphis. He's played with Rudy, and obviously he has Memphis connections, so he knows guys on the Memphis sideline. So he was kind of like, "Who's my coach again?"
Yeah.
But I think Conley is going to be a good fit. Obviously, Wolves fans love to panic, so they're like, "Oh my gosh, look, it's not working. He didn't have a great game. Like, just give it time." I think Minnesota in the short term, they need Cat back really bad because the firepower, that's where D'Lo was really valuable. The
Mhm.
firepower is definitely shrinking, and that makes Cat more necessary on this team because I think Conley needs more guys to feed. So we'll see how this works in the short term, but I do think this makes the Timberwolves roster with the vision of Cat coming back better.
Agreed for sure.
And let's shift to another very interesting deal. I was very confused by this because I made a prediction last week. I thought three of these 4 guys between OG Anunoby, Fred VanVleet, Pascal Siakam, and I'm missing somebody. OG, OG, Fred, Gary, and Pascal. I thought 3 of those guys would be traded. Not one of them got traded. I was wrong. I thought Toronto was going to maximize their value right now. Instead, they go all in, sort of. They deal a protected first-round pick for Jakob Poeltl. That feels like a we're trying to win move. Interesting for the 7th worst team in the NBA. But what do you
Yeah.
think about this?
It's so weird. I mean, they're not even a playing team right now. They're the 11th spot in the East. Like they could have got a ton of value for guys like OG, Pascal. I don't know what the Fran VanVleet's value was, but they could have went, rebuild mode, build around, Barnes and get a top pick this year and hope for the best. But no, they don't really have a real center on that team, I guess. So getting Poto in that sense, not including how the team actually has been playing this year on paper, I guess it makes sense a little bit because now you have a real center. But they still have the extreme half court questions offensively. Like Poto does not help that. He's not, a creator. But yeah, I don't know. They gave up a first round pick in the deal too. I think this is a really good move for the Spurs. You maximize Poeltl's value because you're probably not getting Poeltl back in unrestricted free agency. So you get a first round pick, a player in 2 seconds for that.
Mm-hmm.
That might be more than what the Jazz got for all they gave up. Like that's pretty shocking to think about because I think that's Toronto pick. I mean, it's probably not going to land in 2024, but in 2025 that could be a pretty legit pick, especially if the Raptors decide they want to, go and blow it up the next 2 years if it continues to not work for them, which is a real possibility. But the question is now, how are you going to get, half court creators on this team? And can you
And
figure out a
shooting.
happy? Yeah, and shooting and figure out a happy medium of how much your forwards are playing.
I'll give Masai Ujiri the benefit of the doubt. He is great at his job, but just because I'm going to give him a slight benefit of the doubt doesn't mean I'm not going to criticize him. I think he made the wrong move here. When you look at the value that these guys had, Pascal Siakam having a career season, OG Anunoby, peak value, especially as a young player who's injury prone. I thought this was the golden opportunity to get a boatload of assets, take a step back, and push towards Scotty Barnes, especially with Masai Ujiri, who's a draft extraordinaire. I thought this was the perfect opportunity. You can't guarantee OG Anunoby will be worth the same in the summer. You can't say that Pascal will be worth more than he is right now. I think this is as good as it gets. So I don't think Toronto did a great job maximizing this value, especially me not being a massive believer into the long-term vision of this team. But, if it works out and they start winning and Barnes develops and things that I don't know, we'll see. And you also consider the locker room questions there are. There's been little buzz about Nick Nurse not getting along with the team, stuff like that you hear on Raptors World. But yeah, I don't love this trade for Toronto. But hey, on the bright side, I guess, if you take a step back next year, your pick's top 10 protected. So we'll see. I think Toronto, if this was in most teams, I'll be really criticizing this move. But I think Masai Ujiri deserves some sort of benefit of the doubt. So we'll see how it plays out. And, for San Antonio, like you said, getting a first-round pick for Jakob Poeltl is going to leave you. Another asset. You have that. You have the picks you got from the Atlanta Hawks trade. Those are good assets to start a rebuild with. And San Antonio's developing a core. I mean, Jeremy Sohan and Malachi Branham look like hits as draft picks with Keldon Johnson and Devin Vassell and Trey Jones. They're getting there with a young core. They just need the guy. And yeah, I love this for the San Antonio Spurs. You also get 2 seconds. Birch, just a player in the trade to make the money work. So yeah, we'll see. I think the Spurs won this trade. I think Toronto, if it wasn't Masai Ujiri, I'd be more mad at this trade. But it is what it is.
Yeah, I was kind of surprised today you didn't pick Malachi Branham as your stock riser because I know you're really big on him pre-draft, and he's been balling. He's been balling recently, so I was kind of surprised you didn't pick him. But yeah, they got a solid core down there. I think it's very that they have to get a top pick this year. Hopefully, it's top 2 for their sake. I think it'd be pretty nice. It would be pretty sweet if they get something like Wembanyama after you had the history with Robinson and Duncan, and then you got that new gen version of those guys. That just happens to be 7'5" and can shoot the ball. But yeah, I like it for the Spurs. They're building something. Hopefully, they get a top pick this year. Definitely confused. It comes to the Raptors. If they don't make the play-in tournament, which they should, I don't see them. They're the 11th spot right now, and they got the Bulls and Wizards right in front of them. I think they probably pass up both those teams. But I'd be very concerned still if they don't even make the playoffs. This team has to do something, this year for it to be proved to be a nice move, in my opinion, to just ship off first-round pick and then a little bit more to get a guy like Jakob Poeltl instead of, going the route and shipping off guys for assets. So we'll see what happens. But I like this for the Spurs. Not the biggest fan when it comes to the Raptors.
Maybe I'm just trying to think through Masai's brain. Maybe he prefers the talent on this team over draft picks and still thinks this team won't be very good. So you still have a chance to get a really high draft pick. And if you get a high draft pick, then you don't have a lot of weight on the kid's shoulders when he comes into Toronto, right?
Sure.
Maybe that's what he's thinking. I'm not, like I said, I keep saying this in this segment, which I get really mad about, but I'll let this play out for Toronto. I thought I was very confident he was going to pursue the Sam Presti, Danny Ainge, okay, the score isn't working. Let's blow it up. We can get all these assets for all these guys who probably aren't worth these assets. But Masai, I'll trust you. But yeah, I agree. The San Antonio Spurs got the better end of the stick.
Agreed.
All right. So should we just close out this show with a would you rather build around?
Sure.
All right, perfect. Do you want to do it this week?
I'd have to think about it quick. Shoot. Still going 25 and under, I'd assume.
Yeah.
Should I do the one player or should I do like a mix? I wonder.
I like the one player thing. I let Joel cook last week, but I want to do the one player if we could.
One player. I feel like we've covered a lot of players already. Maybe we can do like Zion Williamson.
All right.
From the Pelicans, who's obviously out right now with an injury. We can start it off right away. Zion Williamson versus the number 2 pick in that draft, Ja Morant. Which I know you're not a big fan of Morant right now.
I would say Ja is more available, even though I question his long-term availability. So I would probably take Ja for that reason. Like if Zion was healthier, I think Zion is the more talented player. But Ja's just been more available, even though, like I said, his longevity is a question too, but it's to a way lower extent compared to Zion. So for that pure reason, I'll go Ja.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think earlier this year I would have taken Zion, but I'm just getting reminded again about Zion's injuries, and yet again, another year in a row, he has an injury that's keeping him out of the lineup, and it's just no reason to lie. Yeah, like if he didn't have this injury this year and was healthy for most of the season, I might have taken Zion, but it's just another reason to lean off of what Zion could be long term. And if these injuries keep building, how long is he going to be in the NBA for? He's going to be an All NBA talent every time he's on the court. But the question is, when is he on the court? By the way, I got to go in 5 minutes. Let's do the next one. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander or Zion?
Shai, that's easy. Shai's younger. Too. He is more durable. I trust him defensively more. I trust his 3-level scoring more. I think Shai's a better player healthy. And additionally, I just think that his durability and his two-way impact, Shai's a really good defender. And he's a big part of why OKC is an above-average defense, despite the youth of that team. He's an awesome player. I think he's the best shooting guard in the NBA.
Zion or LaMelo Ball?
I'll go Zion. I'll lean Zion here. I think if you asked me last year, I would say LaMelo Ball without a question, but LaMelo Ball's lack of development inside the arc is concerning to me. He is shooting career low efficiency 40%, and it makes you question, can this guy be an offensive number 1 scoring engine, which I've always questioned, but you know me. I love slashers. I love guys who can get to the rim because that opens up everything on the court, and LaMelo Ball can't do that. So I'm going to go Zion because LaMelo Ball's lack of efficiency in interior development does break my heart a little bit.
Yeah, I'll take Zion too for the same reasons. Plus, I still have, I have some small concerns when it comes to his injuries, with the ankles. And he's had like 2 or 3 ankle sprains. I think it might be 3 ankle sprains already this year. And
he's been banged up a lot in his career. Especially his rookie year. Remember when we were all whining because it was like, why did he win rookie of the year when he played 70% of the season? And one guy may have played 100%, but yeah.
Yeah, he's also had, his fair share of injuries in his career. So I have questions there as well. Let's go Zion or Trae Young.
Zion or Trae Young. Zion. I think Zion. My problem with Trae Young is I don't think his game is championship level. What I mean by that is he's an excellent passer, but I don't think he makes as many players better as his playmaking suggests because it's a lot of sticky on-ball gravity that doesn't really inspire teammates. And obviously his defense is like, if Zion's defense is bad, Trae Young's is putrid. And he's a really good player. Trae's a special player, but because he hasn't developed as an efficient scorer when you're not counting free throws and the style, I'll take Zion for sure. His game is more inspiring.
All right, last one. This is your stock riser. Evan Mobley or Zion? I'm putting him through it right now. He's been high on Evan Mobley recently.
I'll still go Zion. I think Evan Mobley is special, but Evan Mobley was the most predictable draft prospect I've ever had at the top because You love his game. You love his high Q. You love his instincts. His floor was so high, and it's proven to be that. I don't think Evan Mobley has a number one personality. I think he is a very, like, it's not a bad thing. He's a very tempered kid. It's like Rudy Gobert in a lot of ways, which is pretty funny. Just a very tempered personality. You know, maybe not the guys with the alpha of your locker room, but somebody who is definitely, I would say, a top 2 player on a great team. But I think that's what Mobley is. I think he is probably a number 3, maybe number 2 in offense and a defensive anchor. So an all-NBA talent, I don't think he's the guy. Zion Williamson healthy has a chance to be the guy. So when you're talking about who would I build around, I'll build around the guy who has a chance to be the guy, even though I would say Mobley is a comparable asset to Zion because he's a little more available, even though Evan Mobley gets hurt too, which we got to mention too.
Yeah, I agree. I'd take Zion. I think he can be, your number 1 player in a championship team at some point in his career, even though he has those injury concerns and, staying in and out of the lineup. When it comes down to the, nitty and gritty, I think he can probably stay healthy during a playoff run. And, we'll probably see that this upcoming season if he can stick through it, with the Pelicans. Assuming they make the playoffs, I would be very surprised if they didn't. So, I'd take Zion.
It's not a no-brainer anymore. West is deep, and they're floating around that 6 to 10 range.
Yep, for sure.
That's all the players?
Yep.
All right, guys. That is the conclusion of this Windshield Hoops episode 5. Thank you guys, just of course, so much for being a part of this. We talked about some of the biggest trades, but we also emphasized some of the young players traded. We should have talked about Bones Hyland. I think I completely forgot about that. Do you want to throw like a rapid fire take on that trade and then we can close it out?
Sure. Yeah, I like it for the Clippers get another like young scorer with a really controllable contract, and you only gave up 2 second-round picks there, so it makes sense to me. It just seemed like the Nuggets needed to get rid of him. They were not playing him. He had a bunch of DNPs, so they were like, full on, we're getting rid of this dude, and maybe could have got more value if they would have kept playing him, and there wasn't those problems between him and the players and the organization seemingly. But yeah, I think it's a really nice swing for the Clippers to build around this already nice, core and depth.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see if we get more information about what happened in Denver because it just feels off. A decent young player in his second year as a first-round pick, completely just jumping out of the rotation. That's very interesting. And there's been like a lot of things between him and Jamal Murray. There's been a lot of things about like Denver making him fly commercial for like leaving the bench or something. Like there's a lot of interesting storylines here. So I don't know what happened. Denver was lacking of leverage, and they didn't want to trade with Minnesota, who wanted Bones Hyland the most. So it seems like they settled on this trade just to get him out of the locker room. Is this telling about Denver? Is this telling about Bones Hyland? I guess we'll see down the road. But it's definitely a concerning trend that this burned out so quickly. But that is our last take of the episode. So like I said, we talked about some of the young players, James Wiseman, Sadiq Bey, Bones Hyland, some of the notable players that got traded. We talked about some of the biggest trades at the deadline. And we did, of course, stock risers of the week, who was Evan Mobley and who's your pick again? Mark Williams of Charlotte. Yeah, Mark Williams and Evan Mobley. So, yeah, thank you guys so much for listening to this episode. And we'll be back next week, All-Star Weekend. So maybe we'll plan a special episode for that.
Yes,
so thank you very much, everybody. And we will see you next week.
See you soon.